All right. What is up, everybody? This is Stu, and my little thing says Storehouse 310 Ventures, but I'm actually going to record this as the Military Investor Network. I haven't done one of these in a long time. I used to do these quite often, just kind of random interviews. And my friend Michael, who lives here in Denver with me, we had connected quite a while ago, and he's a West Point grad, so don't hold that against him. He's still a good guy. But he's still Army Reserves, and he comes in and works at the Reserve Center where I work. And so we've been hanging out, talking about. He's a part of our mastermind group, the War Room Mastermind Group, and we were talking the other day about just raising capital. And Michael, and I'll let Michael introduce himself in a second and tell more about what he's doing. But he's been doing apartment complexes, raising money, and buying stuff here in Colorado, primarily in Denver, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I've been working on a deal myself, and so we've just kind of been comparing notes, and it's great to have him as a sounding board, and vice versa. So we figured we would just actually take this and record it. And maybe we can help educate some other people. And Michael has a lot of experience in the civilian side as well, and a lot of the sales strategies kind of turn over to different strategies for raising capital too. So, Michael, thanks for being here. It's early on a Thursday morning, 5:30 a.m. We're up and at it, and
Yeah,
thanks for being here, man.
yeah, thanks, Stu. So just real quick intro to myself and to what I'm up to. I guess let me talk about the fact that just like a lot of other folks, I started out back in the day. I think I read Rich Dad Poor Dad back in 2006, right? So I wish I could tell you that I've spent the last 14 years building up the real estate portfolio and had done everything right. But the funny thing is, going back to after I read that book, I came back to Colorado after my second deployment. Decided to buy the first time, or use my first time home buyer credit to buy a townhome in Boulder. But I just didn't apply any of the principles from that book, right? Like I was like, oh, let me buy a rental property or a property that I'm going to live in for a couple years during grad school, and then rent after that. But what I didn't think about was cash flow, HOAs, costs associated with running a rental property, right? So I did it all wrong. I mean, this was back, like I said, 2008. But going back to 2011, I was then able to buy my primary residence, here in Colorado, Eastern Boulder County. Obviously that was a great time to buy. I didn't know it at the time. I really just probably got a little bit lucky,
Yeah,
to be honest. And fast forward 9 years later, we're about to refi out of that house, and I mean it's almost pretty much doubled in value.
that's awesome.
Right? So pretty excited about that. And yeah, I mean honestly, I've been in tech for the last 10 years. After I got my MBA at University of Colorado, went into a telecom company. And it's funny. I mean, I was a signal officer in the military. I was armor first, but then went signal, which is communications. And I told myself coming out of grad school, there's two industries I'm not going to work in, and that's telecom or aerospace defense. And lo and behold, my first post MBA job was in telecom. So, I don't think I sold out. It was actually a great first job in the sense that I joined a company as part of the rotational leadership development program, and had exposure to a whole bunch of different functions, right? So finance and accounting, corporate development, mergers and acquisitions, but then really business development, alliances, and sales and marketing, right? And so that kind of brings me to today, which is what I wanted to talk about, which is the real estate game, the syndication game, raising capital, really is all about sales and marketing, right? And I think there's a little mind shift there. You'll hear a lot of people say that, if you want to raise capital, you definitely got to be a marketing guru, right? And I think it's a little bit of a mind shift change in that you really want to offer solutions to folks, and you're offering an opportunity to people. And so if you have that mind shift change about what marketing is in real estate and raising capital, I mean, I think you won't come off as a sales guy or a marketing guy. You'll come off as someone who's presenting an opportunity. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, man, dude, that's huge, and that was a really big mind shift change for me when we started trying to raise capital, just individual capital for the single family homes that we were buying and flipping within Storehouse 310. We were using private money, still are, for all of our deals, and that's exactly right, man. It's not me going to someone and asking them for money, right? Instead, it's that mind shift change of me going to them and offering them an opportunity. Like, hey, here's this opportunity that you can join me on for you to be able to make money on your money and, make way more than you would in the stock market and be a part of something, bigger than just, putting some money into a stock or a bond or something like that. And it's us offering an opportunity. And I think that mind shift alone is huge when it comes to really raising money.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, that's right. For sure. And so I guess to the degree where I want to take the conversation today is, like I said, I've been in tech, now for about a decade, about to embark kind of on my third career, right? My first career was the military, loved that, loved being a company commander, loved being a platoon leader, loved leading soldiers, um, but then shifted to business, and I didn't necessarily pick tech on purpose, right? I just thought, hey, I'm interested in finance and entrepreneurship, high growth tech companies, right? You heard a lot at the time. You heard a lot about companies that were going public, and a lot of them. I mean, to this day, right? I mean, the highest valued companies in the world are all tech companies, right? If you look at Amazon, Google, Facebook, I mean, they're all tech companies, right? So I wanted to get my start in tech, and I certainly didn't say, hey, 10 years from now, I'm going to shift into real estate. I think I view real estate more as a vehicle or a mechanism for me to do something of service, right? When we talk about offering solutions or offering opportunities for folks, I've always had an interest in personal finance, and trying to grow generational wealth for people. I mean, at one point I thought about being a financial advisor or CFP, and it's like, I just didn't go that route because, I mean, there's just a lot of people out there doing that, right? So at this point, one of my buddies from my first post-MBA job, a company's called Zayo, he elevated himself to be, VP of a business unit in finance, right? So he led finance and accounting for a business unit that had over 100 million in revenue. And then one day in 2016, he decided, hey, I think it's time for me to move on. Up and left. And, this guy's ex-Air Force, right? Really smart dude. And it's funny, a year and a half later, we meet, in 2017 for lunch or coffee. And, frankly, on paper, it looked like he was still unemployed, right? And so I was like, hey, what are you up to these days? He's like, oh, I've actually been investing in real estate full time. I've bought a quadplex, bought a couple of small multifamily properties, and I've, in a matter of year and a half, I've been able to turn over a couple of them for some pretty nice gain. And so that really piqued my interest. The fact that he controlled his time, he controlled his schedule. Yeah, he walked away from a W-2 income, but he was doing just as well, if not better, without that W-2 income. So I was really intrigued and was like, hey, let me know what you have going on, next, and I'd be interested maybe in partnering with you or at least providing some capital, right? So it's a good way to get into the biz, which is, ride along somebody else who's doing it, who has a track record, maybe passively invest, educate yourself. And that's exactly what I did was, going back to 2018, listening to podcasts, doing a lot of reading. But yeah, I continued to do, the sales and marketing thing on the W-2 tech side of the house. And I think now I'm able to merge those two, because I think a lot of those principles apply certainly from the sales and marketing experience I've gained over the last decade, right? So yeah, I mean, there's one book that I think, even though it was published in 2011, the book's called Predictable Revenue. It was done by Aaron Ross. And this gentleman who authored the book helped Salesforce.com go from early early little revenue, early stage to over 100 million in revenue, right? So he was effectively the sales leader, the marketing generation, demand gen, lead gen guy that took them to 100 million. And obviously, a lot of people know now that they're a publicly traded company. I mean, they're probably not on the same level as like an Amazon, Facebook, Google, but they're certainly right up there in the top tier of kind of highest pedigree of technology companies out there. I mean, if you need a CRM, customer relationship management tool, and you're big enough, you're probably using Salesforce, right? So he talks a little bit about kind of basics of fundamentals of sales and marketing, and how really you have to view those two things as different. Marketing, and obviously that's creating leads, that's collecting names, that's collecting contacts and emails. But sales really is the process of converting those leads, those contacts, those names into a buying customer, or in the case of raising capital, right, an active investor. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to spitball with you as far as what I think makes sense, and we could talk about like lead scoring, how all leads aren't created equal, but like, yeah, let's just talk about that for a little bit, Stu.
Yeah, man. So the other day when we were on the phone talking, we were talking about just some of the different strategies that you and I have been kind of working on. And the one strategy is direct to person. The people that are close within our network of going, either a phone call or a direct email of, hey, friend John, I have this deal available. It's an opportunity for you to invest with me, and here it is. One-on-one. That's kind of one strategy. And then the other strategy is more of like a blanket approach. Like, hey, everybody within my network, one email blast or one, posting. Depending on what type of syndication it is, but hey, everybody, here's this opportunity. If you're interested, you come talk to me. So it's kind of a different strategy. One, it's one-on-one, and it's me going to that person versus a blanket. Here's the opportunity. You come to me. And so I honestly don't know which one is better, which one works better than the other. I kind of chose to go the route of I'll send it out to everybody, and whoever's interested, look, come find me, and we'll talk. And I think you started going down the road of direct to kind of talking one-on-one. And I think I don't know. I think we're about the same level, but it's just an interesting conversation. And the more I talk to people that are in this business, like I'm interested of what their strategy is. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think one is better than the other, or why you chose to go the direct route versus kind of just the blanket route?
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, it's hard to say that one is better than the other. I really like to think that, they complement one another. And to a degree, I guess, let me back up a little bit and talk about it in the context of going back to that predictable revenue book. We talk about leads and not all leads being, or contacts being equal, right? And so Aaron talks in the book about the types of leads out there, right? There's seeds, so seed leads, is one type. There's spear leads, right? And so that's the targeted approach. And then there's the net and net leads, right? And so that's a lot of people in real estate talk about, hey, you got to build a thought leadership platform, right? And that's the net, right? And if you think about all three of those types of leads, I don't think you have to pick one or the other, right? And so to a degree, I ended up picking kind of mostly spears, right? And because I come from a technology background, I've worked with senior level executives for a while now. I have existing relationships where I can pick up the phone or text somebody, and would they be willing to invest $50,000 to $250,000 with me after a couple conversations? And I think the answer to that is yes, right? And I didn't want that to just not take advantage of that, right? And not leverage those relationships. But, I know we're both working on a deal right now, and I think you've completed your raise. I'm pretty close. We're about 70% of the way there. on ours. And there's part of me that's like, well, I should have done more educating and establishing myself as a subject matter expert and thought leader, within the real estate space. Because frankly, a lot of the people that I've been reaching out to are like, oh, this is really interesting. I didn't know you were doing this, right? So they had zero idea that I actually had a track record of more than a couple of years, doing this on the joint venture side, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, let's
uh,
talk about that real fast because so our last mastermind group call that we had, the big webinar was with a guy who does a daily podcast, right? And
yep,
um, and I think and he told us that doing this daily podcast was what has kind of put him over the edge of being able to raise the money that he's raising and buy these large apartment complexes, right? He was a military guy first, and then was like a state police guy, and then all of a sudden he like did this mind shit change and started doing this daily podcast, and it took him a year, right? Like a year plus to get some traction, but eventually he started growing this network, and he became this thought leader in this space. And now all of a sudden he's raising millions of dollars to buy large apartment complexes. And so that to me was like kind of like an eye-opening, thought here is, well, you got to build this thought leadership platform, whatever it is, a podcast, a blog, throwing yourself on social media, like LinkedIn posts every single day to tell people what you're doing. Because, and what he talked about a lot I thought was great was, having this podcast for him, it immediately made people already kind of start to know him when he had really never even talked to him. And then that first conversation that you have with someone, they already feel like they know you because they've been listening to a year on a podcast, and they already have that trust that is paramount when it comes to raising money for a deal, right? So, it's one of the reasons why David and I started our podcast. It's a lot of fun, but there's more strategy behind a podcast than just doing it for fun. So I don't
yeah,
know.
no, I mean, honestly, that's exactly right. Which is, I've invested in syndications now as an LP a few different times, a handful of times. And the fact of the matter is, like, they say when you're looking at investing passively, you always want to make sure you trust and vet the sponsor, right? And so you build that trust by being a thought leader, by being a subject matter expert. And, the nice thing about a daily podcast or some sort of thought leadership platform is that, like, exactly right. I mean, you get to know that person, right? And so that first conversation I had with the sponsor, we actually went right into talking about the deal economics. I didn't really ask anything about him because I felt like I knew him, right? I'd been listening to his podcast for a while. And this gentleman that you had mentioned that has a daily podcast. The deal that he had talked about doing was over a 200-unit deal down in Colorado Springs, right? So pretty close to where we invest. And, we may think about going down to Colorado Springs ourselves at some point or the other. But yeah, no, I've honestly have not talked to this gentleman directly at all, but certainly just through podcasts and through reading some of his material online and through participating in a few different mastermind calls with him. Like, I feel like I've got to know him a decent amount, right? And actually, I guess I did meet him once at a conference, briefly for like 5-10 minutes. But what I remember more about him is the content that he's put out there via his podcast. So
Yeah.
it's been good.
Let's talk about just the network, building the network and using that network for good, to offer those opportunities. I know there's a lot of different networks, and I know that, like you're a part of kind of some different groups of networks, and, how are you kind of tapping into those, and what have you been doing to kind of reach out to people?
Yeah, so obviously, I mentioned earlier, I'm a Service Academy grad, right? So that in itself opens up a lot of doors, because an alumni network, it's interesting. I've talked to some friends that went to top tier Ivy League schools, gotten a Harvard MBA or Stanford MBA or something like that. And for them trying to pick up the phone or randomly shooting an email out, I mean, that's exactly how it's received, is a cold call or a cold email. Whereas with the Service Academy network, you reach out to somebody, you could probably expect a response, within 12 to 24 hours, with a high degree of certainty, right? So tapping your alumni association, tapping close friends and family, right? You never know who's going to be a high net worth individual or who has access to capital. I think one of the important things is, just making sure that you're okay with letting people know what you're up to, right? On a daily basis. What I mean by that is, right, just letting people know, hey, like I've really, like 2019 was a good year for me because I didn't have to pay taxes for the first time in 7 years. That was awesome. I really liked that fact. And, some people's eyes will open up and get interested in that. And that kicks off a conversation, right? So the key point there, I guess, that I wanted to bring up is provide value over and above anything else, right? And so you have to think about it in the context of, okay, what pains, challenges am I trying to solve for myself or for your target customer, your target persona? And then talk and have a conversation in the context of that pain and challenge, right? So, okay, is it taxes? Is it the fact that I am so invested in the stock market that I'm really scared of the risk that I'm exposing myself to? Do I want to build generational wealth for my family and or like potentially pay for my kids' education, 5-10 years down the road? And I know the guys from Bigger Pockets, they always talk about how, the day that his daughter was born or whatever, this is Brandon Turner, he was talking about how he decided to buy I think it was a duplex, but he bought it and put it on an 18-year bank term with a lender. And so the day that his daughter turns 18, like, she's going to have a house free and clear in her name, and she could do whatever she wants with it, right? Whether that's, selling it and going to college on that money, or managing it herself and becoming familiar with property management and the real estate business. But I think that's a great strategy. And as far as leveraging other networks, I think the one thing that's been great recently, obviously, is social media, with Instagram, with Facebook, with LinkedIn. I mean, your reach all of a sudden isn't just your community and your neighborhood, like directly in your vicinity, right? Like it's truly global at this point, right? And so it goes back to that thought leadership platform. Like if you're providing value on a daily basis, weekly basis, whatever it is, you could reach, people clear across the world, right? And so I know you've done a great job about that. I'm just starting to get into it myself, but I mean, sometimes those contacts, those names, are higher quality, more likely to convert versus the people that are in your network that personally that maybe have zero interest in real estate, right? Yeah. And so a lot of books that I've read are like, okay, if you're out there fishing, do you want the fish to come to you, or do you want to like look for fish, right? And fact of the matter is, I'm not a fisherman by any means, but I totally get that analogy, right?
Yeah.
Which is,
you want people to opt in, right? You want people to opt into what you're doing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Right. So, I mean, if you could put a little bit of a tractor out there for fish to come surround you, and then you could just put your net in the water, right? Like get a whole bunch of fish. That's awesome, right? So that's really how you got to approach it, is make people come to you, right? Yeah. And whether that's through a thought leadership platform, whether that's just letting people know what you're doing. And here's the thing, the highest quality lead is always going to be a referral, right? Like if you can create a champion for yourself, advocates for you and your business, I mean, that's going to be gold later on in the future, right? Like, so if you do good things for your investors, if you do good things for your customers, and they become champions and advocates for you, I mean, that's going to pay off in spades, right? Like, and I've already started to get referrals, even though I'm early in the biz. But I mean, those people, I mean, sometimes they don't even ask questions. They just say, "Hey, here's the check." So,
yeah. We did a podcast. Dan and I did a podcast with a gentleman, and he was talking about the book by Stephen Covey's Speed of Trust. As soon as you have that trust, like you can make quick decisions, because that trust is already there, and so you can make a decision like that. Yep, I'm investing with you, because I trust you already, right? And
Yeah.
for me, like back to like the social media stuff and the thought leadership platform stuff. Like for the longest time, like I boycotted social media. Like I didn't have a Facebook. You know, I don't. I still don't really even have my own Facebook.
No,
I
you
like
and
I
your
put
wife share the same one.
yeah. I just put my name on the front of my wife's name and called it ours. But and then like LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn's been really good. I think LinkedIn is a great platform for business. For networking on the business side of the house. I think Facebook it can be used for business, but I think Facebook is a little bit more like personal. But the LinkedIn stuff I think is fantastic, and it took me a long time to kind of that light bulb kind of finally switched on. Was, oh man, this is just a really great platform to connect with people, to network with people, to tell people what I'm doing, and still I try to be humble and like and it's not just like, hey, look at me, look what I'm doing, but it's just like you said, adding value, right? Helping people, educating people, getting people possibly excited about what we're doing, and then being able to offer those opportunities that we're involved in. I think it's huge, and I think some of that stuff on the social media is great. Um, and so yeah, man. And it kind of back to like the network and having those advocates. I had a conversation the other day with a gentleman who's raising like 500 million, like huge deals, right? And I don't want to spoil it. I hope I don't, but he's one of our speakers at the Veterans Live Conference, and
Nice.
one of the things he said that, and I hope I don't ruin this, but I'll kind of just give a little touch on it. But he compared it to like a tree, right? If you look at a tree, on this tree, there's lots of little branches and there's lots of little leaves, out there on this tree, and those are all could be, your investors, right? But in the middle of that tree is one large, stump, right? And then off of that stump, there might be two or three main lines, main branches that all those other investors are connected to. All those leaves are connected to. And if you can find those advocates, those main branches, those main sources that advocate for you, that trust you, that can have that reach to all those other leaves, those investors, that's where you want to be focused. And so, I mean, I thought that was huge. I thought, that analogy was great. And again, I hope I don't ruin it, but I know he's going to bring a lot more value than just that one analogy. But yeah, man, tons of good stuff here. We could probably talk for a long time about this.
Seriously, we can talk
Yeah.
the rest of the day about this, but no, it's been great. It's been great, Stu. I think hopefully we've given people some nuggets to think about, right? I mean, really, in order to scale your business, I mean, you could use your own capital all day, every day, but in order to really scale, people talk about OPM, right? Other people's money. Yeah, and I mean, if you want to be successful in real estate, you have to be well capitalized. You have to be able to close on deals, and raising capital is a big skill to be able to do that, right? So hopefully we provide some nuggets today that were helpful. Always happy to discuss this topic, this investor relations, the marketing aspect, managing content, all that stuff. So if people are interested, yeah, feel free to contact me later on, and we can talk about that.
Yeah, man. So speaking of how what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, email is probably the best way. Michael at k2dmcapital.com. You can go to my website, k2dmcapital. I wish, once again, being more of an analytical mind, K2DM is really just the first initial of all my immediate family's name. So nothing too crazy there.
It's great, man.
Yeah, it kind of sticks, hopefully. It sounds
Yeah.
cool to me. But yeah, Michael at k2dmcapital.com. Reach out, and happy to have a conversation with anybody.
Cool. I'll put it in the show notes, so people can reach you. Cool, man. This was fun. I'm glad we did this, and like I said, hopefully, it'll help some people, at least get some people thinking about different strategies and different ways that they can add value and start offering opportunities to people.
All right.
All right, man. Thanks.
Take care
I
now.
will talk
Cheers.
to you later.